Welcome to Bedcrime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like all things true crime, if you like it delivered in a peaceful, tranquil manner, if you like it clear and concise without drama, then I highly recommend you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please smash the like button. It's a free way you can help. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. We're now entering the fourth week that 19-year-old Jay Slater has been missing in Tenerife. His family is there and they remain frantic. They're continuing to search the ravine where Jay's phone last pinged. Today I want to share the story of another young man who went missing while on vacation with friends. When someone's young adult child goes on vacation for the first time with his friends or her friends, the parents or parent usually sends them off with the instructions to have a good time, but also to be safe and to have their guard up. The adult child typically replies, "I will, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine." And off the young adult goes as the parents hold their breath and perhaps pray that all will be well. In July of 2014, 28-year-old Lars Mittank of Germany hopped a plane with 5 of his guy friends and headed out for a beach vacation in the resort town of Varna, Bulgaria, which is on the Black Sea. Varna is like Bulgaria's version of Cabo San Lucas. It's an oceanside area with sunny beaches, all-inclusive resorts, plenty of dance clubs, and free-flowing alcohol in every direction. Back in Germany, Lars was a hard-working engineer with a longtime girlfriend and parents that he spent a lot of time with. Sadly, his father had had a stroke, and so Lars often spent his free time helping his mother care for his father. It was a pretty stressful lifestyle, as you can imagine, and this was one of the reasons he decided to go on this week-long trip to Bulgaria. He wanted and needed to unwind. Tragically, at the week's end, Lars would disappear under mysterious circumstances. This is the unsolved disappearance of Lars Mittank from Bedcrime Stories. Lars was born on February 19th of 1986 near Berlin, Germany. He would later move with his parents to Marne, Germany. Not long after that, the family moved a second time to Isenhoe, Germany. This is in the northern part of the country. Lars was a very social child who found it easy to make friends. As a teenager, he discovered a love of fishing as well as scuba diving. But Lars's greatest passion was cheering on his favorite football team, the Werder Bremen. And by football, I really mean soccer. As you may know, soccer is huge in Europe, and they call it football. Lars went to every game. Instead of attending a traditional 4-year college, he went straight to studying a trade. Eventually, he became a power plant operator, and it was a coal-fired plant. When he got his job at the Wilhelmshaven power plant, it took him 150 kilometers away from home. That's roughly 93.2 miles, so quite the distance. But the distance didn't matter to Lars. He wanted to go home and help take care of his dad. So he would do that every weekend. Back to the vacation. On June 30th, Lars and his friends fly to Varna, Bulgaria. They check into the Hotel Viva, a 4-star resort, all-inclusive, along the Golden Sands beaches. This area is known as the Bulgarian Riviera. Who knew Bulgaria had their own Riviera? As his buddies opt to stay in the hotel room and enjoy a meal, Lars heads out to the beach to play football, soccer, with some recent high school graduates. Lars is someone who prefers being active over sitting around eating and drinking. The days go by quickly. They're filled with sun and sand and fun. And we get to July 3rd. At 11 p.m. on July 3rd, Lars and his friends go to a bar together to watch Costa Rica play the Netherlands in their World Cup quarter-finals match. Lars and his buddies exchange the flags of their hometown teams with others in the bar. I guess this is a thing. You take little flags and you share them with other people who are also watching the game. Lars is proudly representing his team, the Werder Bremen. So as they're watching this game, they're downing drinks, they're getting a little bit tanked, if you know what I mean. At some point, Lars's enthusiasm for his hometown team upsets a group of other German tourists who are representing the team out of another German city. And it gets really ugly. They're in each other's faces, they're practically ready to brawl, and most of the anger seems pointed at Lars. At 4 a.m. on July 4th, Lars and his friends are the last patrons to leave the bar. Now, two of his buddies are really hungry and they want to go over to a nearby McDonald's. Lars, however, has no desire to eat fast food, so he declines the invitation. And instead he says he's going to return to the hotel room alone. This sounds so much like the Riley Strain case. The hotel is approximately 1 kilometer away. Keep in mind, it's 4 a.m., the streets are deserted, and it's a little bit of a hike. 1 kilometer equals 0.62 miles. But along the route, Lars is attacked by a gang of either Russians or Bulgarians. They jump him and they start pounding on him. Finally, after a period, he breaks free, but his left eardrum is torn. He makes it back to the Hotel Viva, where he sleeps for a few hours. He then awakes at noon and calls his girlfriend. He tells her about the attack and says that he thinks the attackers were hired by the German tourists who were in the bar and who were fighting with him. His girlfriend advises him to go to the hospital, but Lars says he wants to allow his ear to heal naturally. That night, Lars heads out once again with his 5 friends. So the night goes well. There aren't any arguments with any other tourists, nobody gets beat up, nobody's shouting. On July 6th, the guys spend the day relaxing at the hotel, at the pool, just chilling. And then on July 7th, just before 12 p.m. noon, Lars checks out of the hotel to head to the airport, but his ear continues to throb, and he realizes that flying might permanently harm his hearing, so he decides to go see a Bulgarian doctor. Between noon and 1 p.m., Lars visits with a doctor who tells him his eardrum is ruptured and he cannot fly in this condition. The doctor tells Lars to go to the St. Anna Hospital in Varna for additional care. Lars goes back to the Hotel Viva and he tells his friends that he can't head home with them. Later that day at 8 p.m., a shuttle bus picks up Lars's 5 friends and takes them to the airport. Now, some of the friends offered to stay behind with Lars, but he told them, no, just go home, I'll be fine, don't worry about me. I'll catch the first plane I can once my ear is in decent condition. Lars then gets a cab and tells the driver to take him to the St. Anna Hospital. And at 8:40 p.m., an ear, nose, and throat specialist examines his ear. But Lars is not admitted to the hospital. Instead, he's given a prescription for an antibiotic called cefprozil. This is supposed to help with the torn eardrum. Lars ends up leaving the hospital. He asks the cab driver to take him to a pharmacy. So he goes to a pharmacy, but they can only fill half of the prescription. So then he has to go to a second pharmacy to fill the rest of the prescription. He then asks the same cab driver to take him to a cheap hotel. The driver takes him to the Hotel Color. Lars pays for the room with his credit card. Just after 11 p.m., after taking the antibiotic, yes, he did take the antibiotic. Some people who cover this story have said that he didn't take any of it, but there were some pills missing from the bottle. Lars calls his mother, Sandra. Lars tells his mom about the fight in the bar and about being attacked and ending up with this ruptured eardrum and about getting this prescription. Now, of course, his mom, Sandra, is very disturbed by this story, and she ends up hanging up to arrange for a medical transport for her son back to Germany. Lars then calls her again. This time, though, he's whispering, and he's adamant that his mom must cancel his credit card because he's certain that he saw the hotel desk clerk copy the card. Sandra books a bus out of Varna for the following day, and she counsels Lars to get a good night's rest. Now, before midnight, Lars calls his mother again, and this time he's even more paranoid. He makes it sound like his room is being bugged with a wiretap. Sandra does her best to calm her son down, but he hangs up saying he needs to get out of the hotel. Between 2:30 and 3 a.m., Lars calls his mother again. He tells her now that 4 men are following him and they want to do him in. He quickly hangs up. Then at 3:06 a.m., Lars texts his mother and he asks her what Cefprozil 500 is. Now that's the antibiotic that he was prescribed. He repeats the exact same text at 3:15, asking her once again what this particular antibiotic is. After getting all these phone calls and these weird texts, Sandra is realizing that her son is in trouble, that something is very wrong with him. So she books him a flight home out of the Varna airport. The flight is scheduled to leave later that day at 4:20 p.m. So at first she booked a bus ride for him because she thought that that would be a safe way for him to travel without hurting his ear. Then she books the flight home because she wants to get him home as soon as possible because she can tell that something's very, very wrong with him. He's not thinking straight and he's sounding really, really paranoid. Okay, so the day he's supposed to fly home is July 8th. Now, it sounds like he didn't sleep at all that night when he was, texting his mom and calling her, because at 5 a.m., well before the 4:20 p.m. flight, Lars is spotted getting into a cab. Now, this must have been some type of a ride share because there was a woman already in the cab, and she will later tell the authorities that Lars's pupils were completely dilated. So the driver takes them to the airport. Lars then goes up to the guy who works at Western Union to find out how to send and receive money. Without his credit card, he needs some ready cash. Lars then calls his mother and he asks her to send money via Western Union. She doesn't know how to do this because she's never done it before, but she figures it out and she sends him 500 euros. She also tells him to check in with the airport medical office to ensure that it is safe for him to fly with his ruptured eardrum. After Sandra arranges for the Western Union transfer, she calls Lars back. He answers, but once again he's whispering, and it's so quiet that she can't decipher what he's saying. He quickly hangs up, and this will tragically be the last time Sandra will ever speak to her son. At 9 a.m., Lars goes to see a doctor at the airport medical clinic. During a period of about 42 minutes, Dr. Kostan checks out Lars's ear, he gives him some special eardrops, and he clears him to fly. The doctor tries to give Lars a prescription for some other pills. It's unclear what this other prescription is for, but Lars rejects it. It sounds like he doesn't like to take prescription medication, that he prefers a holistic approach. Then at 10 a.m., when a construction employee who's working on a job at the airport comes into the clinic, Lars basically freaks out. He whispers, "I don't want to die here." And then he tears out of the clinic. He runs through the terminal at breakneck speed, headed toward the exit. Now he's left his luggage, his wallet, his cell phone, everything he had with him in the medical clinic. So of course now he has no means of speaking to his mother. He has no identification on him. CCTV inside and outside the airport picks up images of Lars running for dear life away from the airport. It captures him as he runs through the parking lot, climbs a fence, and then runs off through a meadow of sunflowers. He disappears in this sunflower field along the highway. Now, all this time, Sandra is trying to reach her son without success. At 11 a.m., she calls the consulate in Varna. At 12 p.m., a consulate employee calls Sandra back to tell her about Lars's escape from the airport. The following day, Tuesday, July 9th, a missing persons report is filed in Germany. Lars's employer, the power plant, hires a private investigator and a lawyer out of Varna. The investigation thus begins. Not long after the missing persons report was published, the Bulgarian authorities brought Sandra in to look at the CCTV footage at the Varna airport. In the video, Lars appears troubled and desperate, but no one appears to be following him. Sandra was shown additional footage that has also not been shared with the public, and apparently in that footage, Lars is seen outside running, and when he sees two police cars, he carefully navigates around them as if trying to avoid them. This to Sandra meant he was aware of his behavior because he was making decisions. I personally don't see it that way. To me, I would think that if Lars was in his right mind, he would have spoken to the police officers, told them what was going on, and asked for help. Now let's talk about what could explain Lars's strange behavior and why he abandoned his luggage at the airport and tore off into a field, never to be seen again. Many efforts were made to find Lars, but he was never discovered, and to this day he remains missing. There have been some sightings in Europe over the years, but none that have turned out to actually be Lars. It's hard to imagine how Sandra copes with her son's disappearance. In some ways, while talking to him on his cell phone, she was so close to him in those moments. But when he ran out of the airport and abandoned his belongings and his phone, Sandra found herself completely cut off from communication with him, unable to reach out and quickly rescue him. Let me share now some of the theories about what happened. Was Lars really being stalked by the four guys who beat him up earlier that week? This theory doesn't make sense because right after being attacked, Lars still went out and partied with his friends. If he was fearful of being followed and pursued, it's doubtful he would have been socializing in a carefree manner with his friends, and no one ever reported these guys following Lars. Theory number 2. Some people believe Lars may have been involved with the four men in some sort of drug peddling operation. Again, this sounds a lot like the Jay Slater case where people are trying to say that he and his friends were drug mules. The theory posits that the four men forced Lars into peddling narcotics, and this is why he stayed in Bulgaria when his friends left. This could explain why Lars avoided the police cars at the airport, but there's pretty much zero evidence of Lars having any drugs on him. Nothing was found in his suitcase and other belongings that he left at the airport. And Lars was a healthy guy. He didn't even want to take the antibiotic. Now, the doctor who treated Lars at the airport has changed his stories over the years. In one story, the doctor said an airline employee came into the medical office at the airport and spooked Lars. In another story, he described the person as a construction worker. He also had a third version where he said he didn't recognize who the person was that came into the medical clinic when Lars was there. But the authorities have cleared the doctor, and they say he didn't have anything to do with Lars's disappearance. The fourth theory, and probably the most popular one, is that Lars suffered some sort of mental health crisis or a psychological break. Some people blame this on the cefprozil antibiotic. Possible side effects of this drug include hallucinations and drug-induced psychosis. but these side effects are extremely rare. However, if the antibiotic is taken along with alcohol, the chances of experiencing these side effects increases. Lars was definitely drinking during the entire vacation. Now, his dosage of the Seprozil was on the high side, 500 milligrams. Lars also appeared nervous about the drug. Remember, he sent 2 texts about it to his mother, asking her what it was. So the question is, did Lars experience side effects after taking the Seprozil? Is that why he asked his mother about it? Did his anxiety post getting attacked also play a role in all of this? And how was Lars's mental health before the vacation? At age 28, Lars was on point with the statistics of those who are most likely to suddenly experience the onset of schizophrenia. His symptoms, feeling that he was being followed, not being in control, fearing imminent death, and being extremely paranoid, line up with those of people who are early in their diagnosis of schizophrenia. Everything that Lars went through could have triggered schizophrenia in him, but no one in the Mittank family has ever been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And to this day, Lars remains missing. His mother holds out hope that he could still be alive. Perhaps he doesn't remember who he is, and he's wandering around Europe, perhaps as a homeless person, perhaps with a new identity, not remembering that he has a family back in Germany. Sandra has never given up on her son, and she went to great lengths to try to reach him and have the authorities find him. This is how a parent whose child is really missing and the parent is not involved, this is how such a parent acts. So you can look at Sandra and compare her to, say, Chris and Katie Proudfoot. Did you enjoy this? Did you find it interesting? If so, smash that like button, and I will see you next time on Bed Crime Stories.
Jeden Tag darum, endlich eine Spur von ihrem Sohn zu bekommen.
Wir vermissen ihn sehr. Ist unser einziger Sohn.
Was ist geschehen? Lars war mit 5 Kumpels im Juni 2014 in den Bulgarien-Urlaub gefahren. Ein echter Männerurlaub am Goldstrand für 7 Tage. Am 5. Tag gab es jedoch nach dem Besuch in einem Schnellrestaurant einen Vorfall.
Auf dem Weg vom McDonald's zum Hotel wurde er von mindestens zwei Leuten angegriffen und aufs Ohr geschlagen, wo er dann einen Trommelfellriss erlitt, der später bei einem Allgemeinarzt am Montag festgestellt wurde, worauf er dann Flugverbot erhielt und eine Einweisung ins Krankenhaus.
Seine Freunde waren in der Zwischenzeit alleine nach Deutschland zurückgeflogen. Im Krankenhaus erhielt Lars die Diagnose, dass die Trommelfellverletzung halb so schlimm ist. Mit Medikamenten in der Tasche, CFC 500, schickte der Arzt ihn wieder auf die Straße. Lars setzte sich in ein Taxi und der Fahrer empfahl ihm ein Hotel.
In diesem Hotel hat er mich dann in der Nacht angerufen, hat mir die Situation erklärt und hat dann aber gesagt, dass er Verdacht hat, dass da irgendwas mit der Kreditkarte nicht in Ordnung war, dass sie irgendwas mit der Kreditkarte gemacht haben und ich sollte ihm seine Kreditkarte sperren.
Und auch die Behausung kam Lars nicht ganz koscher vor und er verließ in der Nacht noch das Hotel. Doch auf der Straße kam es zu Zwischenfällen. 4 Männer verfolgten den jungen Mann und er musste sich ein Versteck suchen.
Ich habe dann gewartet, dass er mich selber anruft. 2 Stunden später circa hat er mich dann angerufen und sagte mir dann, er ist gut am Flughafen angekommen.
Damit er wirklich fliegen kann, wollte Lars vom Flughafenarzt in Varna das letzte Okay bekommen. Laut Protokoll wurde das Trommelfell gecheckt und Fieber gemessen.
Der Arzt wollte ihm weitere Medikamente geben, die hat er strikt verweigert, was ich daraufhin in Bezug ziehe, dass er auch die CFC 500 schon angezweifelt hat und deswegen wollte er keine weiteren Medikamente nehmen. Dann hat er unterschrieben, auf eigene Verantwortung zu fliegen und dann ist er aus dem Arztzimmer weggelaufen.
Was im Sprechzimmer passiert ist, weiß keiner. Lars flüchtete ohne sein Gepäck ins Freie und verschwand in einem Sonnenblumenfeld. Seitdem ist der Kontakt abgerissen. Die ganze Familie hat alle Hebel in Bewegung gesetzt, um ihn zu finden. Zwar gab es kleine Hinweise, doch die führten nicht zum erhofften Ziel.
Ich möchte mit diesem Video bezwecken, dass ganz, ganz viele Leute sich das zu Herzen nehmen, sich umschauen, mit offenen Augen, mit wachen Augen durch die Gegend laufen und vielleicht schauen, ob das mein Sohn sein könnte. Dass sich viele Leute dafür interessieren. Es könnte auch ja von Ihnen selber, würden Sie